Coming up today on LinkedIn News Live, recycling and zero waste initiatives are just a few of the many actions that companies like Dow and Chipotle have taken to reduce their carbon footprints. We speak with two executives at those companies to learn what efforts corporate America can take to become an eco-friendlier society. That and our trending headlines next. Hello, I'm Caroline Fairchild, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation begins with you. Today, we're talking about the role of environmental and social responsibility in business. But first, let's take a look at the top headlines trending right now on LinkedIn. The U.S. hits a vaccination milestone. The jury deliberates Chauvin's fate. And Gamestop is losing its CEO. Let's take a deeper look into that story. Video game store GameStop said Monday that CEO George Sherman was stepping down at the end of July, paving the way for the company's sixth leader in 4 years. That's a lot of leaders. He'll be exiting with around $184 million in equity, according to the Wall Street Journal. We're just seeing a ton of commentary on the platform here. Here's one from Tyler Kane saying, "It's no secret that the company has been struggling financially for years now, and that they need to overhaul their business model if they hope one day again to be a profitable business." And here's one from Roderick Mann, who says, "You can switch out every man, women, and child at GameStop, and they still don't have a business." Some strong thoughts there. And to join conversations like these on LinkedIn, be sure to check out the news module to the right of your LinkedIn feed, or if you're in mobile, you can click into that search box. Long gone are the days that companies can only solely think about profits when driving business results. Today, brands need to consider the larger impact their business is having on the environment and their community. In fact, ESG, or environmental, social, and corporate governance, are playing a growing role within corporate America as employees and shareholders alike are demanding that companies operate sustainably. Joining me now to discuss as part of our coverage for Earth Week is the head of sustainability at Chipotle, Caitlin Liebert, and Dow's Global Sustainability Director, Haley Lowry. Haley, Caitlin, welcome to LinkedIn News Live.
Thank you for having us.
All right, Caitlin, I'm going to start with you. You've been at Chipotle for over 13 years now, and you actually built their sustainability program from scratch starting in 2011. What does that look like to start from scratch? What were some of your priorities back then?
Yeah, definitely. So a decade in this role this month, which is wild. So a lot of reflection. I've been thinking a lot about this. You know, when we started, so much of the work that I was doing was discovery work and data work and really trying to benchmark and baseline our efforts to start. You know, we had a massively well-known food with integrity program, which is one component of ESG or sustainability. And my role was to really understand, how do we raise the bar across the board on all of our sustainability metrics and ESG. So that was really the start, digging in, uncovering rocks, understanding where we stood so that we can chart the course for where we want to go.
And Haley, you have that in common with Caitlin here. You've been at Dow for quite some time. In terms of your focuses, how they shifted over the years from when you started to now?
Yeah, sure. So, Dow is a leading material science company. For those who may not know, we've been around for 125 years, and sustainability is not new to us. We have a long history in this space. Our founder has a quote that when you walk into our headquarters, it says, "If you can't do it better, then why do it?" And that resonates so much with me, because our future is really finding ways to grow the business and protect the climate, and these represent the next waves of growth. So our journey has been progressing from, how do we improve our manufacturing footprint to have lower carbon footprint on assets that we have, also to taking things into the next decade, because in the next decade we're going to have more people on the planet. They're going to need more food, more energy, generate more waste, and these demands on natural resources are going to increase. So we have to figure out how to do it better, not just as a company, but as an industry and a society.
And Caitlin, to some of Haley's points there, I think a lot of people joining us in the stream may assume that sustainability has to come at the sacrifice of profit, but you were actually able to drive millions of dollars in savings for Chipotle through some of the programs and initiatives. Let's break down that assumption a little bit right now. Why do people think that profitability and sustainability are at odds?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept that I think somewhere along the line, somewhere in sustainability, they almost made an excuse in understanding. Look, we want you to adopt some of these sustainable things, so we'll make it really easy for you to do that. Well, look, we've evolved. Sustainability isn't just a nice to have, right? It isn't, it is something that needs to be core to the business. And so, look, there are some things that do take a longer ROI, long-term investment. There's no doubt about that. But they're also, the core of sustainability, if you really think about it, is about trimming, right? It's about saving and trimming. And ultimately, that should involve some sort of cost savings. So for us, my CFO likes to Jack Hartung likes to use the phrase, the genius of A&D. And when we go in and we talk to him about some of the programs that we're thinking about long-term, making sure that we highlight, you don't have to just have one, right? You don't just have to have like a great food with integrity program. You can also drive incredible margins at that same time, right? So he's really passionate about this concept of the genius of and, which has really inspired us to try and uncover every rock possible, to not just invest for the sake of investing, but really make sure that we are being as smart as possible with our sustainability initiatives.
I'm seeing a ton of new members joining us in the stream. So if you are just joining us here on LinkedIn News Live, I'm here with Haley and Caitlin. They are leaders respectively at Dow and Chipotle, and we're having a conversation about the growing role of ESG within corporate America. It is Earth Week after all, so if you have questions about any of these topics that we're discussing, please let us know in the stream and we'll have a conversation about that on today's show. Haley, I like that idea from Caitlin, the genius of and that they think about at Chipotle, because one of the reasons I wanted to talk to both of you is that, traditionally, if you think back a few years, a lot of people may have thought, sustainability efforts, ESG efforts are kind of over there siloed, not necessarily in the boardroom with corporate leaders. So how do you specifically partner with the C-suite over at Dow to ensure that these efforts are brought into the business model itself?
Yeah, so we want to, I would say that it's not just senior leadership. All leaders want to see companies grow. And for us, we sell a lot of products into packaging applications, and many of the brand owners in this space are demanding packaging that's recyclable or made with recycled content. And so, if we want to be a provider, which we are for the marketplace of the future, it's providing our customers with what they want and what they need. So this organizational transformation that I think you hit on a little bit is moving from sustainability of being an ancillary function to ingrained within our business units. And I would say the next level of the journey of where we are is that it isn't just for someone where it's in your job title. If we're going to meet these targets that we have set and many other companies have set, we need everyone in the company to think of it as part of their job. So if you're in supply chain, how do you decarbonize your fleet? If you're in purchasing, how do you buy packaging that is recyclable? All of these roles have an importance in this story.
And Caitlin, what Haley's talking about there, just the demand of what, say, package makers are saying in terms of recyclability. What are you hearing from Chipotle customers in terms of their expectations for the food that that's put on their plates when they come to a Chipotle location?
Yeah, we're really lucky both on the customer front and the employee front. I think we have a super engaged group of individuals working for us, and we have a super engaged group of customers. We have an incredible consumer insights team that keeps us really plugged in to what the customers are saying. There is no doubt that they care about this. They want us to continue to be a leader in this space. I think innovation tends to be some of the stuff that really gets headlines. We share a little bit about our gloves to bag program, some of the more innovative things we do. We upcycled avocado pits. These things are important, but we also
let's break that down a little bit. What is the gloves what is the gloves to bag program? Because I know Haley's excited about that one too.
Yeah, for sure. So this was for us, again, I want to ground it in data. So 9% of our waste was film plastic, so gloves or plastic wrap. And we know this because we actually got in the dumpster many times. My team loves me for that one. And we sort through the waste. We work with a third party. We measure it all out. So we know 9% of our waste was this unrecyclable film plastic. And in order to move the needle on our waste diversion. We had a 50% goal by the end of 2020, which we did hit. We hit 51%. But in order to do that, we had to get creative. No common recycling stream would take this film plastic. So we had to innovate, right? We had to create our own solution. And so I took a nod from the circular economy. I think anyone in the sustainability space is pretty excited on the concept of a circular economy. So what are our outputs? What are inputs? Are there any matches there? For us, we got a hit actually on the same material of our gloves is the same material of our waste bags. So we worked with the supplier of our waste bags, and they were fantastic about innovating this upcycled loop for us. So we recycled gloves at our restaurants and turned them into the waste bags that we used as a way to lengthen the diversion. So that's like one type of story that we find customers get a lot of traction on. The key there is making sure that it's linked in data, or else it's just greenwashing, right? Making sure it's actually material to your business. 9% of our waste was made out of this material that we had no solution for. That's something we need a solution for. And that's why that story got a lot of traction with our customers.
Great. Seen a lot of questions in the stream right now, and I want to say hello to some new members who are joining us as well. We have Robert from Massachusetts, Anastasia from Greece, Ronald from Colombia, Sunny from India, and Katya says that businesses need to find a social problem and create a product service to solve that problem. And then we have a question here from Craig, which is going back to some of our earlier discussion around profits versus sustainability. Craig wants to know, how do you balance the interests of shareholders, say in the short term, and true long-term sustainability approaches? How do you have those difficult conversations about, say, what's happening on Wall Street versus your long-term goals for the business? Haley, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that's why ESG is so important, because it's no longer BlackRock put out a report several years ago that talked about it just isn't about the company and the profits that the company provides over the long term. It's also about the benefits that they bring to the communities in which they serve, the benefits that they bring into environments and society. And so that's what ESG really starts to encompass and measure companies' performance on both of those, because I think that's critically important in this space.
And Caitlin, Haley's comment about the report out on BlackRock, that gets me thinking around. There are a ton of investment firms and shareholders who are now saying, I'm not going to invest in your company if you don't meet certain criteria when it comes to social responsibility, diversity, environmental sustainability. Has Chipotle been tracking that? How do you think about that in terms of its ability to move the needle for how companies are thinking about this more holistically?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first, I'd like to say, there's Haley, I don't know if you've seen this too, but for us, there is no doubt that we've seen an increase of interest from investors reaching out about ESG. So there's maybe this myth that exists that, there's a compromise between the two. But what we're seeing and what I'm hearing in the conversations that we're having and the line of questioning from investors is fantastic. It's engaged in this. They want to know, to Haley's point, they want to be investing in companies that think about these things. So for me, and not just think about these things, but have targets, clear targets, and are making progress on these things. So for me, I've been super encouraged. I am really lucky that I get to go on the investor circuit, so to speak, and have these conversations and have just been so encouraged with what they're asking and what they're pushing for. And in fact, the question isn't about sacrificing profit in order to achieve some of these, but what can you do more? What is your stance on this? And I love that sort of energy that we're seeing from the investor community right now. A great anecdote about that, we published our sustainability report last week. Our head of investor relations sent that out. And we got some great comments back from some of our top shareholders about it, right? Not just like, great work, this looks great, but really, this is meaningful work. We're proud to invest in you. We want to continue to see this grow. These are the things that we find really encouraging in this space. It's not, a periphery thing anymore, ESG. It's really at the core of what we're doing.
Well, Caitlin, I'm pretty sure the first and only guest on LinkedIn News Live to ever say that they enjoy going on the investor circuit. So thanks for bringing that to our program for the first time. No, but in all seriousness, okay, you're saying that investors are now really interested in this. They're asking you critical questions when you go into these meetings. But take us back a decade when you started this program. Were you having to fight to get into those rooms? How has it really been transformational over the past decade?
Yeah, first let me say I'm super lucky to work for a company that, some key elements of ESG have always been in our identity, right? This food with integrity. We were really out there early on. So to that extent, I've always had a seat at the table, which is remarkable and wonderful. But what I think is incredible, a decade ago, companies, multi-billion-dollar publicly traded companies, were really shy about even admitting climate change, right? Even discussing or acknowledging it was considered controversial or a leadership stance. And now you see that everyone's rushing to have the best stance on climate change out there, the most aggressive targets. And so how things have changed in the last decade about this, for sure. And again, I just say that the line of questioning we're seeing is, maybe in the past you had one or two investors, one or two, employees sort of on the periphery of an investor group that might join a meeting and ask a question or two. Well, now we're full on, right? We are full on. It's the subject of much of the conversation we have, which is important and exciting. And frankly, what we just recently did, tying executive compensation to ESG, is another step in putting our money where our mouth is in a lot of this. And I think investors, rightfully so, reacted well to that.
Absolutely. And the only thing that I would just add is, we've tied our employee performance awards to ESG as well. So that starts to create action within the organization. Employees want to work for companies who are doing good for society and the communities in which they live and doing good for the world. And there was a research study that came out that talked about employees who derive meaning from their work have a 2 times higher job satisfaction and are 93% more engaged at work. So even for those who you've got the highly motivated, really want to work on this, and even for those who may not get it yet, their performance award is now tied to ESG metrics. So I would say it really creates action across the entire company, because that's what we need to solve these big world challenges. And that's where the future of business growth is also coming from.
And this push that we've seen, I would say it's accelerated rapidly just in the last year. And I'm curious if you guys see that, tying executive compensation to diversity metrics or employee performance to ESG efforts. Is that at all, do you see either of you see that at all related to the pandemic and just the focus that this crisis has put on the work the companies are doing outside of just driving profits?
Yeah, Haley, I'll take a stab at that first. I think there is no doubt that last year really, it illuminated I think it did 2 things. One, the interconnectedness and the planetary boundaries, right? There's no doubt that we saw that. And the other thing that we saw, and we've learned this now from some of our consumer insights, there is no doubt that each of us are more and more tied to our purpose than ever before, right? I think your world sort of shrinks in these unprecedented times, right, that we had, and you really are able to hone in on what matters most to you. And I think to a lot of people, these core values that surround sustainability or ESG rose to the surface as something that actually really matters to them. And therefore, we're being more intentional in our behavior as we come through this pandemic, right? And as we're starting to increase our consumer spending and different behaviors, we find that people are being more and more intentional about that. So yeah, I think we're going to continue to see trends in this, but let's not call them trends, right? I think we're going to continue to see progress towards making ESG and sustainability core to our businesses.
And the other thing that I would add is I think the recent events have reminded us that without a healthy planet, we can't have a healthy society. And so our products are really critical to enabling both healthy people and a healthy planet. And we have the responsibility to do more and are taking action. In the midst of the pandemic, we launched 3 sustainability targets to protect the climate, reach carbon neutrality by 2050 in alignment with the Paris Accord, to stop the waste and to close the loop. And so I think when even I personally look back at 2020 and even into 2021 and what I've learned, we have to rebuild back better, not the same. So it's causing us to rethink our business models, to rethink manufacturing, to rethink our ways of working, and rethink systems such as recycling, because again, we have to rebuild that.
Seen a robust discussion in the comments here, Haley and Caitlin. Charlie says, enhancing the focus on sustainability in business isn't like flipping a switch. Smart companies seek to understand their total footprint and prioritize their efforts to turn the dial up in areas that make a difference. Charlie, thanks for joining us on the show. And a couple questions here. I have one from Kimberly. She's asking, do you engage community leaders when developing your sustainability goals? I'm thinking now to President Biden's global summit later this week on climate change, where he's bringing in world leaders. Does Chipotle or Dow, do they think about how they're engaging in the community as well when they're thinking about these initiatives?
I'll take that one first. So yes, we do. When we and one of the actions that we took was about 30 years ago, we implemented a sustainability external advisory board. This is a board who advises us on our journey. Are we thinking big enough? Do we have blind spots? We value that feedback and that collaboration because we know that alone we're not going to solve these issues and these problems, but together we actually may have a shot at it.
Yeah, and I can just add to that. I think for us, we absolutely do. We have 2,600 plus restaurants, and each one of those operate in a unique community. And the employees that we employ work and live around that community. So our communities are really important to us. And one of the ways that we recently engaged with the community, we had a pledge to commit $1 million to fighting systemic racism. And that was last year. One of the things that we did was $250,000 of those. We actually gave that money to our GMs essentially. And we said, tell us where in your community you want us to give this money. So we started something called the Community Outreach Grants. And we had our general managers nominate organizations within their community that were doing this incredible work. And we were able to award $250,000 directly to our communities in which we operate. So yeah, definitely, not just are we listening, but we want to hear what our employees think is important in their communities as well.
And here's another question I'm going to throw to Haley from Hubert. He's saying, how can ESG metrics be compared within industry groups? And Haley, I'm throwing that to you because I think some people hear the word chemical and the opposite thing that they think of is sustainability. So within your industry in particular, what are some goals moving forward that you're working on?
Yeah, I think some of the initiatives that I'm most proud of in the industry is all working around to solve plastic waste into the environment and also improve recyclability. We have to get the waste out of the environment, and we need to make sure that it is more recyclable. I think the numbers are plastic is currently recycled at around 9% globally, and that's not okay. We have to reach higher recycling rates. There's one project that we have done in Brazil. We call it Recycling for Change, where there are waste pickers who are required by law in Brazil to sort and collect trash by the cities, and that plays an access into getting material that is often seen as waste, but actually companies value it and view it as a resource. And we partnered with them to get that recycled plastic back into the circular economy. The cooperative increased their sales by 50%. The salaries of the workers increased by minimum wage, and we saw a 70% increase in productivity. So I think what's important is that we have to get more access to recycled material, and the marketplace wants that. And there are models to be able to do this in places like Latin America, where over 4 million people get their income from collecting and sorting waste. So it can be good for business, good for environment, and good for the communities in which it operates.
Well, Caitlin and Haley, I know I speak for the stream when I say thank you for the great work that you're doing at your respective companies and for also joining us on LinkedIn News Live.
Thanks for having us.
That was Caitlin Liebert from Chipotle, as well as Haley Lowry, breaking down how the role of ESG is changing across corporate America. I want to thank them for joining us on the show. Tomorrow on LinkedIn News Live, we're going to have an interesting discussion about how to navigate emotions at work in a pandemic world. I'll definitely be taking notes for yourself and your colleagues. How much is too much and when is it not enough? We'll discuss that with an expert. I'm Caroline Fairchild. Thanks for joining us on LinkedIn News Live.